I want to bring in Democratic Congressman Brendan Boyle from Pennsylvania, ranking member of the House Budget Committee. Congressman, it's good to see you again, and I understand you just came from a Democratic caucus meeting. What can you tell us about it?
Well, I can tell you that in that room, every single person who spoke up talked about what a terrible deal this is, frankly, not even an agreement. It is something that makes sure the health care crisis imposed by Republicans continues in this country. You know, we're looking at the expiration of the Obamacare tax credits in just over a month and a half. We're then looking at the Medicare cuts to take effect January 1st. And then, of course, let's not forget the biggest cuts of all that are coming, the Medicaid cuts, which are coming next year. In total, Republican cuts to health care amount to over $1 trillion in order to help fund their tax breaks for billionaires. So the fact that this was not addressed is the reason why I will be voting no, and possibly every single House Democrat, but at least 99% of us will also be voting no.
Let me ask you about what the Republicans have said, that they would consider extending the ACA tax credits, but they want in exchange that there be more insurance restrictions on abortion. What do you say to that?
Well, first, I'm very skeptical that the same people who just a few months ago voted for these cuts. Let me be clear about this. These cuts were not just naturally going to happen. All of this crisis is directly as a result of the Republicans' tax bill that they passed over the summer, what Trump used to call the big, beautiful bill, but then it became so deeply unpopular he now doesn't even mention it. Well, I will continue to mention it because I will remind people that, again, over $1 trillion of cuts to health care, it was the Republicans, almost all of them, who voted for this. So I find it a little hard to believe that the same people who cut for over $1 trillion worth of health care just a few months ago are now suddenly going to come back and say, oh, no, we really want to address this health care crisis that we ourselves created.
Do you believe that with what's happening with ACA, with the bills that are going out, with the folks who will lose their insurance, that there will be increasing pressure? Do you think that this is something that cannot be resolved until if and when the midterms happen and if the Democrats take control? Where do you see this going? The suffering is going to continue.
Yeah, so I would think that any Republican who watched the election results from last week would think, oh, boy, we are facing a very angry electorate. They realize that they were hoodwinked, that a year ago Donald Trump said, vote for me and costs will magically come down. And here we are a year later, costs haven't gone down. In fact, they've gone up dramatically, in large part because of his tariff tax policies. So I would think that Republicans, even if they don't really care about health care, I would think they would have every incentive to work with us to solve the problem they created. But so far, I don't see any evidence of that. And I think, if anything, the last 6 weeks should show you just how far Republicans are willing to go to ensure those health care cuts take place.
Think that there's any chance that Speaker Johnson or the White House tries to stop that vote and that release from happening of the release?
Well, Speaker Johnson has already tried to stop the vote. He sent Congress home a week early in order to avoid a vote. So absolutely, I think we need to be prepared to call out any obstruction in releasing the files.
Can I ask, because obviously you're going to Washington, you're voting on this deal that has gone through the Senate now and is coming over to the House to reopen the government. I know that you've been opposed to that because it doesn't include the extension of the ACA subsidies that Democrats have been saying they're fighting this fight over for the last 40-something days. But can I just point out that vote is expected to happen tomorrow in the House to reopen the government. After that, though, we think the House is going to be out of session the rest of the week. It was already scheduled that way, but I wonder just what you make of that you're coming to have this vote, and then obviously there's a lot of other work for the House to do that has not happened over the last 40-something days.
I don't know any other job where you don't work for like the majority of the last 4 months. 19 days over 4 months. It's crazy to think about. And the fact that everyone has been compensated. when you look at federal workers and this devastation of missing yet another paycheck, it's so difficult for, everyone that I've talked to is like, we don't know where our next meal is going to come from, but we want you to keep fighting for us. We like seeing Democrats fight for working people. And that vote really does nothing to protect affordable health care for the American people. And Republicans have had 15 years since 2010 when they have continued to discredit the ACA, talk about how it's wrought with all these issues. You've had 15 years to work on it. And now we're talking about having a vote in the Senate in December when half of December it's closed down for, the holidays. It really is incredulous. I just cannot think of another job that would be allowed. Well, and it shouldn't be allowed. And people in every district should be mad at their representatives for not working.
This funding deal will only go through January. I mean, do you think that there could be another government shutdown in 2 months from now?
I do. Well, and why is it that this House and Senate can only work on a budget in increments of 2 or 3 months? Why can't we have a budget that actually addresses the rest of Congress and work on the issues that we can find some bipartisan support? I mean, that's crazy. And yes, we're going to be dealing with the same situation all over again.
I think a lot of Americans would probably agree with that sentiment, Democrat and Republican. Congresswoman-elect, hopefully the last time we call you that, Adelita Grijalva, thank you for being here tonight, and safe travels.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
And the group chat is back. So first, we know that Mike Johnson has said, look, this is something Nancy Pelosi did at one point, not bringing someone in until the House was in session. Of course, now turnabout became what they're hoping to say is unfair play. Is it remarkable in any way that Grijalva is finally getting seated? You're smiling. Because a Democrat, or do you think there's something significant about the moment?
Well, when Speaker Johnson made that comment, he left out one caveat. That was the request of the incoming member to delay the swearing in for one reason or another. So what you're saying, it wasn't partisan at the time? Right. 800,000 people in Arizona went without representation after a decisive victory in that race, which I think is not only unconstitutional, it's a matter of political malpractice. After a 54-day paid taxpayer vacation, Republicans are now finally back to work. But in the midst of all that, he could have easily sworn her in to allow 800,000 Arizonians to have representation, Democrat, Republican, Independent, or those who did not even participate.
With all respect, you're trying to gaslight Republicans for the shutdown when it was Democrats who were doing it. So I'm not really buying that, because Republicans, when Biden was in office, they voted 13 times to give him a clean CR. That the golden rule is that you do unto others as you want them to do unto you. And unfortunately, the Democrats in the Senate were the ones who really did this shutdown. So they have themselves to blame for keeping this Congresswoman out of office. It's not illegal. She's wrong about that, because obviously there is precedent of this happening, and there was no legal ramifications against Nancy Pelosi at that time.
Well, again, Nancy Pelosi was asked to delay the swearing in, and Johnson could have sworn her in the midst of the government shutdown.
She said it was illegal. That's an important thing to accuse the Speaker of the House of illegal criminal.
Well, there were lawsuits filed. I was going to answer that question. There were lawsuits filed by the Arizona Attorney General that the courts will ultimately decide whether it's legal or not. But the fact is, in the midst of the government shutdown, he could have sworn her in if he wanted to.
In the meantime, there's this conversation that is returning about the Jeffrey Epstein files. There are a couple Republicans that kind of keep this ball in the air. Grijalva would have been joining a vote there. Why do you think they are keeping that ball in the air? There's plenty of time for Thomas Massie or whoever to be like, okay, we don't need to talk about this anymore.
Well, because conservative voters care about the Epstein files, and they have for many, many years. And the reason that some of these Republicans are, defecting from Donald Trump is because their voters care about it. Now, the reason why a lot of Republicans would prefer not to talk about this is because, we don't even need to see the files. There's plenty of videos showing Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein used to cavort together.
This deal is failing in multiple ways. One, you're going to see significant votes against it. There's no guarantees. But the original deal, the original point of the deal for Trump was, you get me this shutdown, and I can use this shutdown to hopefully put pressure on to to screw the working class and to help my billionaire buddies. Yes, but also you get me this shutdown so that when the shutdown is over, the deal is, and he went to Mike Johnson and said, this is the deal I want. The deal is everyone forgets about those files. Everyone forgets about my buddy. Everyone forgets about those plane rides that people took and maybe I took. And everyone forgets about what I knew and didn't know and who was my friend and who I sent a birthday card to. And on and on and on. That was the deal all along. The whole point of this shutdown was, one, give money to billionaire buddies. But the thing is, Republicans were doing that before. I'm not saying the shutdown didn't help them with that, but the Republicans have always given away money to billionaire buddies. They did that in Trump's first term, and they did it not with a shutdown, but just they passed a big tax cut. They did it earlier. They passed a big tax cut. It's one of the few things Republicans can do is give money to billionaires. Right? And so they didn't need a shutdown to really do that. What did they need a shutdown for? They needed a shutdown to keep Grijalva out of office, and they needed a shutdown to hide this story. And that deal failed because right now things are coming back, and the coalition to expose that friendship, quote unquote, is bigger than ever.